What's up? It's time. Next House of the Dragon episode. I was shocked by a couple of scenes in this episode. Um, Man, I have not reviewed out of this chair before. I usually review in this chair, but the cats were just in here. I feel a lot shorter. Anyway, let's talk. House of the Dragon, episode 4. Whew. There was some difficult stuff to swallow in this episode, dealing with familiar relations, so to speak. Um, but we powered through. Still a great episode. There were some really powerful scenes in this one we're going to be talking about in the review today. Spoiler alert, I do not do spoiler free reviews. We are going to be talking about all the things, good and bad, which honestly, there weren't a lot of bad. I'm Tim Anderson, aka Renfail, the bearded dwarven princess to some from the Rings of Power world. If you like what you see here today, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Support with a super thanks to below. It's super easy. $2, $5, buy me a cup of coffee. Don't be a cheap bastard. The only way Netflix and HBO Plus and Disney Plus stay on the air is from the support of subscribers. I am the same way. So you either can do a super thanks or you can join as a member of the Adventurers Guild. 3 different tiers depending on what you want to support with. We do lots of fun stuff for everybody. In the meantime, though, we're going to get into this episode today. House of the Dragon, which is blowing Rings of Power out of the water in every way. Let me get my show notes up. Again, spoiler alert for all the peeps, because we ain't holding nothing back. So we open to this scene of the princess entertaining a long line of potential suitors, potential husbands. And I mean, that's a long line. There's people going all the way out the door. And we start off with a really old man who's got to be like 75. And she even makes fun of the fact that he's that old. And one of her advisors is like, "That was not very seemly, lady." And she's like, whatever. And then the next person in line is literally like a 12-year-old, 15-year-old kid. And he's giving this speech with a shaky voice. And there's somebody mocking him from the side. And then as he's giving the speech and finishes, she's like, "You know what? I've had enough for the day. Let's get out of here." And as this is happening, one of the guys from the sidelines calls the kid a craven. Kid pulls his sword. The other guy pulls his sword. There's a fight. The kid guts the other guy, and she's just like, "Oh my god, this is ridiculous." And she decides, "Screw it. I've had enough. I'm done. I'm on my way home." And we see her on a boat, and we're being told that she's 2 months earlier than she was expected, which means she was on this sort of tour of duty that was put together by her father to entertain suitors from all the different kingdoms and across the realm to try to find someone who could be her husband. Because again, she gets to choose at this point. And then as they're coming in on a boat, you hear a dragon coming from above, and then it swoops down and almost knocks their boat over, and it's Daemon with his dragon. The next scene is the king getting ready to sit upon the throne, and everyone's entering. And I was kind of disappointed here because he does get some screen time later on in the episode, but I feel like they've got Graham McTavish in just. He's a supporting cast only in this to the point where some episodes, and I know that's just editing, you know what I mean? Like, he's getting paid to be a supporting actor in this show, and he's not a main guy, and he does have speaking parts. But I love Graham McTavish. This guy's a badass actor, and he doesn't get speaking roles and speaking moments in every episode. And I think it's a waste of a great actor, but it is what it is. Um, the hand is arriving. Everyone's ready to attend Daemon as he enters, and boy, there's an air of tension as he comes in because he's wearing a crown put together of bones, maybe. I didn't confirm what it is, but he walks up to the throne and he gives the hammer. He doesn't actually give, he takes the hammer from the Crab King and says, here's another one for the chair, and just kind of drops it on the ground. And Viserys is like, "I see you're wearing a crown now." And he goes, "Well, they called me the King of the Narrow Sea after I won the day in the fight. Although," but then he goes on and says, "I know there's only one true king." And then he bows to his brother and tells a tale of the 2,000 dead soldiers staked to the sand to warn against future invasions. And the king welcomes his brother home with a hug. Daemon puts his head on his shoulder. It's almost a hug. It's not quite a hug. And I'm wondering here, is Daemon earnest or is he pretending? I honestly think he's pretty earnest at this point. Um, he's showing deference to his brother, the king, and coming home after a period of time. It's been a few years. We get confirmation of the timeline here in a little bit. The next scene is the Alicent confiding in the princess that all anyone ever sees now is the queen, and how neither of them have any friends, and you know, it is what it is. Sad girls being sad. Rhaenyra's then chatting with Daemon about why are you really back? And this is where we get the timeline. He says it's been 4 years since they've seen each other. So there was in the last episode we heard it had been 3 years because it had been 3 years since the child's birth, and then apparently it's been a year since then. And then she has this long talk with her uncle about how, she's not happy with what she's been relegated to. Um, her mother was suffered to produce heirs until it killed her, and she does not want the same fate. Excuse me. Um, we're in the council chambers next. By the way, those are the 2 a.m. wake ups are getting to me, man. The cats have been crazy the last few days, and all the storms. Anyway, back in the council chambers. Turns out Corlys, the sea snake, has taken over from where the Crab King was, and the council's reporting that Lord Corlys has entered into negotiations with the Sea Lord of Bravos um, about wedding his daughter Lena to the Sea Lord's son, and everyone's freaked out because if House Valerian enters into an alliance with the Free Cities, they're going to be then forced to seek their own marriage pact to shore up defenses. And the princess is not happy about this because she's suddenly being told again that rather than being allowed to choose her heir or her mate, she's potentially going to have to be forced to take one of the council or her father's choosing if the sea snake is following through with things. So she's back to not being happy, but she kind of has no one but herself to blame at this point. 3 cups of coffee is apparently not enough. It's wearing off. The next scene, we see the princess in her chambers. Someone's been in her room. There's a cloak. It smells different. And then there's a note showing her a secret door behind her bed, which leads her down into the catacombs and out over the city. And here, Daemon is waiting for her. And he takes her off into the city to have a night of revelry. And she's loving the fact that she's being unseen, called a boy, not recognized, getting drunk, watching street plays. And here we see in the street play a very important component where the mummers are mocking the king and the princess and the 3-year-old prince, and everyone in the crowd is cheering the 3-year-old prince as the heir and not the princess. And Daemon explains to her, "Look, this is what you have to understand. Many of the small folk, whether it's right or wrong, they want a male heir to the throne. This is going to be the difficulty of you being leader if you take over in any of these current political climates. They don't want you. It is what it is. They want a male heir, right or wrong." So this is very important. It's an important moment in the show because we are establishing that, like it or not, and this is very important for people who are, firm believers in the W agenda. It's a man's world, and you don't have to agree with it, but it is what it is when it comes to medieval settings, and this is just reinforcing that. The next scene is where things start to get, because we're getting mixed. It's fast pacing here. We then see Alicent being summoned to the king's chambers in the middle of the night, and she is not happy about it because she knows why she's being summoned. It's time for humpy time, hoochie coochie time, and meanwhile Daemon has taken the princess to one of the whorehouses, and she's a little disturbed by things, but she's also drunk. Meanwhile, the leprous king. This is a really disturbing scene, by the way, where he's on top of Alicent, and you just see his back covered in these lecherous lesions, and he's doing his husbandly deeds, and she's just lying there lifeless, looking up into the ceiling. And it makes you wonder because there are moments when Alicent shows true affection for the king, but then there's this moment when she's obviously like, "Ah, this is so nasty. Ah, oh my God, this is so gross." Um, and then we have Daemon taking his niece back to the humping rooms, and this is where I was like, "Is this really going to take us where I think it's taking us?" And he gives he gives her this whole speech about, it doesn't matter your duty. Fucking can be pleasurable and all these things. It says marriage, even though it's a duty, your life doesn't have to be that. You can have it be what you want. You can do what you want with who you want when you want. Basically showing her that her birthright means that she can do whatever she wants whenever she wants with whomever she wants, and duty can be damned, which is somewhat true. However, it depends on your point of view. Um, and they start to initiate an encounter that I was like, oh, this is getting into super risky territory. And at the last moment, Daemon resists and says, you know what, I'm not going to do this, and breaks it off and storms off for the night and leaves her, all sorts of, flustered with herself. She runs off looking after him. Then we get the queen staring up at the ceiling after the king is finished, seeing a rat moving around. Um, Princess runs back to her room. Crispin's surprised because she comes into the front door. And then there's the first predictable sequence that I had seen in the show so far where, obviously she's drunk. The princess is drunk and she wants, she needs something right now. And she convinces Crispin to have sex with her. And you can obviously tell that the guy has affection for her, but he also knows that he's not supposed to, and his duty is not supposed to allow this. And the way they drug this scene, not the actual lovemaking scene, but the way they drug the scene out where he's getting undressed and taking off his armor, and he's constantly looking over towards the door, and this guy's nervous as hell because he realizes that if he gets caught, like it's his head. Like this is not something he should be doing. And so I love the way that they did the pacing in this scene to show that this is a big, big no-no. Um, then we are to a little bit later. There was a kid that went chasing off after Rhaenyra after she left the whorehouse, and it turns out this kid is reporting to the Hand. And he saw the princess leaving the whorehouse. He witnessed everything. The Hand is really stressed out at this point, and I'm torn here because I don't know how much of Otto is legitimately, because he does legitimately appear to be torn about telling the king what he just heard about. But he also definitely has his own ulterior motives by maneuvering his daughter to be in the position that she's in right now. Like he did that on purpose. And I think it goes to show you that even if someone has affection for the king and is doing their duty, they're still going to do. By the way, and this is a brilliant. Well, they're still going to do anything. I'm getting sidetracked. They're still going to do whatever they need to do to get into power. So there is a saying in Mexico, because I spend a lot of my time here and married to a Mexican, and we have our homestead in Mexico and etc. There's a saying in Mexico, si no tranzas, no avanzas, which means if you don't cheat, you don't win. And remember, Game of Thrones is all about the fact that you're constantly maneuvering to be in the best position. And I really do think Otto loves his king and is trying to do what's best for the kingdom and trying to do right by his king, but he's also not afraid to leverage his daughter, and he's not afraid to do whatever is necessary to maintain his position at the top of that pack. And that's just, if you don't cheat, you don't win. So he's really stressed, but he does go on to tell the king, and he rouses him before the council. And he's like, it's no easy thing to tell a father of his daughter's exploits, and I was torn about whether I should tell you this or not, but she was seen carrying on with her uncle. But so it doesn't matter that Daemon didn't actually follow through with it. It's what people saw. And the king accuses Otto here. He's like, you just want to ruin her reputation, you bastard, because you just want your own heir on the throne, so to speak. And it's a fight, and Otto leaves. Meanwhile, the queen summons the princess, and she is pissed. Crispin's also nervous as fuck because he goes to tell the princess that she's been summoned, and the princess is like, "Oh, come here, Crispin. Hi, baby." And he's like, "Nope, sorry. You've been summoned by the queen." Like he's like, "I fucked up. I fucked up." So Rhaenyra knows she's been caught here at this point, and she tells a white lie to the queen because the queen is going off about her virtue, and Rhaenyra's is like, anybody who questions my virtue, that's an act of treason. And then she tells us what a little white lie about how Daemon never touched me and then abandoned me for a whore after his cups. and gives this, it's not, some of that's not true. He did touch her, and she was reciprocating, and she actually was kissing him and trying to push it further, and he was like, no, no, I can't do this. Like, stop kissing me. I shouldn't have started this, and he eventually backed away. And then the queen gives this speech about sullied honor and everything else. And next scene is Daemon hungover, um, and he's coming back to the palace, and the King's Guard arrest him and drag him before the king. So now we're back to brotherly fighting again, despite the fact that the day before they were best buddies. There's an empty throne room. Daemon's face down, hungover, and this is one of those brilliant scenes with just, this is thespians at their top of their game. The king is yelling at him, "What lord will want her now after you've defiled her?" And here's the thing, Daemon doesn't actually deny any of it. He's just like, yeah. He says, you need to. He basically, I'm not going to repeat all the dialogue here, it's just a brilliant scene, but he basically tells his brother to stop being a little bitch and to, stop worrying about what other people think about her sullied honor and all this other stuff, and act like a dragon king. Act like one of the kings of old. We have dragons. We are the birthright. We are the rulers. Rule with an iron fist. And then he goes into the speech about, give her to me as my wife. Let us rule in the old ways. And this is where his brother kicks him out and says, get back to the Vale to your lawful wife and never return to my sight. It's a very powerful scene here. We then get Rhaenyra with the king in the chambers, and they're talking about this special dagger which has the inscription of the prophecy in it, but the responsibility of their line to bear the one who will rule with the song of ice and fire. And he tells Rhaenyra, he's like, the truth of the matter doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you didn't consummate it or not. It just matters the perception. And she rebuts that if she were born a man, she could screw who she wants, bear a dozen bastards, and no one would care. And the king says, that's true, but you weren't. You were born a woman. Um, and they have this speech about where she's like, she's gonna have to go marry the sea snake's son, Corlys's son, and she says, "You just want to marry me off to him to solve your political headaches." And he yells at her, "You are my political headache." And I was like, "This is great." She then gives him this speech, and this is another one of those brilliant acting sequences. She's yelling at him about political motivations, and she accuses the Hand of being so self-interested that he's spying on her to bring her down because he wants his own son to be named heir, um, and etc. And she finally just ends it up and says, I will wed and do my duty, but first you need to do yours as king and get rid of the Hand. And then we get this scene between Otto and Viserys, which is super potent and powerful. And it goes back over the history of how Otto was made king by pure chance, but he was very loyal to Viserys's grandsire and his father, and and etc. And not his father, but his grandsire, and how he served nobly, and he taught Viserys everything he knows about being a king. But he now is finally understanding that Alicent was a calculated distraction, a very calculated distraction, one that I fell for. And Otto's like, obviously he's affronted, and he's like, my lord, sometimes a loyal hand must tell the king discomforting things, or he has failed. And Viserys tells him, look, you were faithful, and I thank you for your service, but I can no longer trust your judgment. He does tell him, though, he's like, we owe you a debt that can never be repaid, but I can no longer trust your judgment. And he pulls the hand pin off of Otto's chest, and I was like, oh snap, I didn't see that coming. Um, Meanwhile, the king has sent the Maester with a tea to Rhaenyra that will rid her of any unwanted consequences, they say. So they still don't believe that she didn't consummate with Daemon. No one knows about Crispin, I think, but she obviously is going to have to drink this tea because she can't be having a baby. Lots of stuff happened in this episode, and honestly, 10 out of 10 again. Yeah, maybe this one I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Sorry, because there was that predictable, we're gonna hump Crispin. Maybe 8.5, 9 out of 10. Still really, really, really good if it weren't for that predictable component, but it is what it is. I don't know if that's in the books or if that's thrown in for the show because I've never read the book. But great episode, loved it. Love to hear your thoughts down below. Like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, follow along to get more. Don't forget to support in all the ways you can to keep me on the air, keep me going full time. Don't forget to check out the analytics video the other day and beyond, and stick around because we've got Wheel of Time, Rings of Power, Willow, Star Wars, Andor, and beyond on this channel.